Welcome to the Musar Torah podcast for Parshas Vayigash. Join us as we explore the weekly parsha, uncovering valuable insights and striving to become the best versions of ourselves through Musar teachings. This week we are exploring insights from Rabbi Yaakov Medan of Yeshivat Etzion, one of the leading Torah scholars and educators in Israel today. This week's parsha contains one of the most emotional moments in all of Tanakh, Yosef's revelation to his brothers and the subsequent reunion with his father Yaakov after 22 years of separation. But hidden in this deeply personal family reunion lies a profound strategic decision that would shape the future of the Jewish people for generations to come. The Torah goes out of its way to emphasize repeatedly that Yosef settles his family in the land of Goshen. Yosef tells his brothers, Vayashavta ba'eretz Goshen v'hayisa karov Eli ata uvanecha uvnei vanecha v'tzonecha uvakarecha v'chol asher lach. And you shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children and your children's children, and your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. Here's what's puzzling. Yosef is the viceroy of Egypt, second only to Paro himself. You would naturally expect that when his family arrives, they would be settled in the capital city, given prestigious positions in the government, integrated into the highest levels of Egyptian society. Yosef doesn't do that. He does the exact opposite. He deliberately presents his brothers as simple shepherds, an abomination to the Egyptians, and settles them in Goshen, some 50 miles away from the centers of Egyptian power and culture. Why would Yosef choose isolation and even disrespect over honor and integration? The answer reveals Yosef's profound understanding of Jewish survival. Yosef realized something critical. His family wasn't coming to Egypt to wait out a famine. This was the beginning of a long exile, the very exile that Hashem had foretold to Avraham Avinu at Bris Bein HaBasarim. If the descendants of Yaakov were going to survive as a distinct people, if they were eventually going to leave Egypt and return to the land of their fathers, they would need to maintain their unique identity, values, and way of life. Cultural integration, no matter how prestigious, posed an existential threat. The Rambam famously teaches that the Avos were like kings, and kings of nations came before them to make covenants with them. Yosef could have leveraged this status. He could have presented his brothers as dignitaries, worthy of the highest honors in Egyptian society. But Yosef understood that short-term honor would come at the cost of long-term survival. He was willing to pay the price of disrespect and separation in order to preserve something infinitely more valuable, the ability of his people to remain distinct, to maintain their covenant with Hashem, and ultimately fulfill their destiny. The text hints at a profound tragedy. Had the generations that followed listened to Yosef and maintained this cultural and religious autonomy until the day of their departure, their situation would have been infinitely better throughout all the days of their exile, both in terms of their faith, customs, and of their relative freedom. But as we know from Sefer Shemos, they chose a different path. They integrated, they assimilated, and they paid a devastating price for abandoning Yosef's strategic vision. This raises an uncomfortable but essential question to us. How often do we make the same mistake in our own lives? How often do we prioritize immediate social acceptance, professional advancement, or cultural integration over the preservation of our distinct Jewish identity and values? Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, the great leader of German Jewry in the 19th century, faced this exact dilemma. He famously said, "Be a Jew in your home and a mensch in the street." But he also warned against the dangers of excessive integration that would lead to the erosion of Jewish distinctiveness. He understood Yosef's lesson. There's a difference between being a contributing member of society and losing yourself in that society. The Bali Musar teach us that every generation faces its own unique test. For some, it was the test of physical persecution. For others, including our own, it may be the test of comfort and acceptance. When the surrounding culture says, "Come join us, be like us," there's no need to be different. We must have the wisdom and courage that Yosef demonstrated to recognize that our distinctiveness is not a burden to shed, but a treasure to preserve. This doesn't mean isolating ourselves completely from the world around us. Yosef himself was deeply engaged in Egyptian society. He saved the entire civilization from a famine, but he knew where to draw the line. He knew his family's home, Their values, their daily life needed to be rooted in something separate, something that wouldn't dissolve into the Egyptian culture no matter how long they stayed. Rabbi Yecheskel Levenstein would teach that the path of Torah requires us to live with a certain creative tension, to be in the world but not of it, to engage with the society while maintaining our core identity. This is not easy. It requires constant awareness, intentionality, and sometimes the courage to accept being misunderstood or underestimated, just as Yosef's brothers were when they were presented as simple shepherds. Let's now bring this home to our daily lives. In our workplaces, in our neighborhoods, in our social circles, are we making choices that preserve our Jewish distinctiveness, or are we slowly compromising away the very things that make us who we are? When we face the choice between fitting in and standing out, between convenience and principle, between acceptance and authenticity, what do we choose? Yosef teaches us that strategic distance is not a weakness, but wisdom. Maintaining boundaries is not about superiority or isolation. It's about survival and authenticity. The goal isn't to be disengaged from the world, but to engage from a place of strength, rootedness, and clarity about who we are and what we stand for. As we read this week's parsha, let's look beyond the dramatic reunion and recognize the quiet wisdom of Yosef's decision. Let's ask ourselves, what are the Goshen in our own lives? The boundary we need to maintain, the distinctiveness we need to preserve, the strategic distance we need to keep in order to remain true to our mission and our covenant with Hashem. May we merit the clarity to recognize what truly matters, the courage to maintain our distinctiveness even when it comes at social cost, and the wisdom to know that sometimes the greatest gift we can give future generations is the preservation of who we are. This has been the Musar Torah podcast. Thank you for listening. Until next time, may we all merit to carry forward the legacy of Yosef, engaging with the world while never losing ourselves in it. Have a good Shabbos.